New Zealand is quite similar to the United States in that when Japanese car manufacturers began arriving here in the 1960s and 70s, they used motorsport as a means to promote their products and establish their brands. Toyota arrived in New Zealand in mid-1960s but began assembling cars here in New Zealand in 1967. And in 1969 it began a motorsport program that basically continues to this day. Toyota focused its early competition programs purely on rallying. Rallying events back in the 1960s and 70s in New Zealand were brutal. They were pure endurance events. They went for several days at a time, sometimes up to a week. They were always held in winter when conditions were most miserable. They were held in the rain and the snow and the ice and the sludge. The cars had to go through river fords. They were really tough events, and it wasn't enough just to have a fast car. You needed to have a car that was strong, and that's where Toyota really came into its own. Toyota's first competition program was the 1969 Silver Fern Rally, and the company ran a sole 1100cc Corolla, and although it wasn't the quickest car, it was far from the quickest car, it was strong, it was durable, and it ultimately finished fifth in the rally, which was a theme that continued on for the next several years to come. Toyotas were invariably not the fastest cars at the events, but they were strong and they made it to the finish, and so they usually finished quite high up in the results. But for the 1973 Heatway Rally, Toyota decided to step things up and gun for outright glory. But because Toyota New Zealand at the time wasn't assembling or selling a proper high performance car, they instead imported 3 TE27 Levins straight out from Japan. These were burnt orange coloured road cars which were converted into rally cars here in New Zealand. And the car that I'm featuring today is one of those 3 cars, and it's one of only 2 that are still in existence. So here it is, our 1973 Toyota Levin TE27. Now this as a model is a vehicle that wasn't actually marketed outside Japan, so it was a pretty rare car to begin with, and of those that were sold in Japan, obviously not a huge number of them survived. But what makes this one even more special is that it was obviously one of just 3 that were shipped to New Zealand specifically to contest the 1973 Heatway as Toyota New Zealand factory cars. And I'll bring you down here to the license plate GG42. So obviously with rally events, as they are being contested on the road, the cars had to be road registered, and so they were done so simultaneously and were registered as GG41, GG42 and GG43. Now at first glance, one of these TE27 Levins looks a lot like a KE25 Corolla, and the body shell is more or less the same. There are some subtle differences to the body shell itself, but outwardly the most obvious difference are these pretty little fender flares, which are fitted to the car as standard. These are fitted to the road car, and also the Levin was factory fitted with 13-inch diameter wheels, whereas the Corolla only had 12-inch wheels. Now this car here, as I said earlier, it's one of only 2 of the 3 that have survived. GG43 is the other that's also survived. But this car here is probably, in my opinion, the best known of the 3, in that it was featured in a Motorman road test in its original road going guise before it was converted over to rally car specs, and so it got itself a fair bit of ink before it ever became a race car. So this car was shared by Graham Carter and Graham Brownlee on the 1973 Heatway, and it was actually Graham Brownlee who who wrote and test drove the car in the Motorman feature before it became a rally car. Toyota's 73 Heatway Rally actually turned out to be a complete disaster. The event took place, I mean these events were epic. It took place right throughout New Zealand, both in the South Island and the North Island. It began in the South Island. The total distance was about 5,000 kilometres, and of that 5,000 kilometres, about 2,500 kilometres were special stages. So it was a real endurance epic, and these cars were all struck with clutch problems. I don't know what sort of clutch they ran in them, but yeah, all three Levins were struck down by clutch problems, and I think it was GG43. They actually changed the clutch 5 times just on the first day. So they were pretty well screwed right from the outset, and spent the rest of the rally catching up. One of them even had an engine change during the event. It might have been GG41, but in the end they finished well down the field. By the time the rally finally concluded in Auckland after 5 days and 5,000 odd kilometres, they were way down the field. But once they got the clutch issues sorted and the cars really started humming, they were clocking up some of the fastest stage times on the rally. And so yeah, it's a sort of a case of what might have been had everything come together and the cars actually proven to be reliable. So this is the heart of the beast. It's such a beautiful engine, this Toyota's famous little twin cam, just under 1600 cc's. Now these came fitted with Mikuni carburetors, but in a racing environment, it's been fitted with Delortos, probably 45mm Delortos, I believe. Beautiful looking header there, strut brace and everything across the front. Really a lovely car. Detail on this thing is just amazing. Isn't that pretty? Such a rare piece of motorsport history, a rare car anyway, but yeah, such a rare piece of motorsport history, a rare piece of New Zealand rallying history, and a genuine Toyota New Zealand works racer. Just something so special. And I'll come over here. I recently wrote a book about Toyotas, and this right here is the cover car. Now, following the 1973 Heatway Rally, all 3 of the Levins were sold, and this car went to Ken Cleghorn, and he continued rallying it, and he actually had a lot of success with the car, and he's winning the 1974-75 Heatway Rally by a massive amount, about 40 seconds or so, but had an engine failure right towards the end of the rally, which is a real shame, because certainly the cars deserved to have achieved a much more successful career than they actually did. Continued to be a rally car right through into the 1980s, and then eventually it was purchased in 1989 by a fellow named Clive Robertson, and he completely stripped it down and restored the car basically as you see it now. It took him a few years to achieve. Obviously rally cars take a real pounding, and the body was taken right back to bare metal, and all the damage removed and all the rust and everything removed, and then it's sort of gone through a few different owners until it's ended up today with Toyota enthusiast Mike Rainish